Hi, and welcome to TED Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Today, I'm joined by founder of cell and gene therapy business, Jason Foster. Jason, your business is Biotech. For the benefit of our listeners, could you give us a really sort of high-level overview of what Ori does and the problem that you guys are tackling with the mission?
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks for having me on. It's excited to be here and have a chance to chat with you. I'm not a founder of the business. I was an early employee. I think it was the second or third. I joined the
Oh,
founding
really?
team
Okay.
early on. So yeah, so I'm the CEO of Ori Biotech, and Ori is really trying to bring a whole new generation of personalized medicines to patients at scale. Many people don't know that we actually have cures for cancer and rare diseases that have been created. They are
Oh, really?
approved, by the FDA or the MHRA or the EMA for use in patients. But they're very, very complicated to make. They're very expensive, sometimes costing between $500,000 and $4 million per patient.
Really?
And because of the complexity in making them and the costs associated with them, these products are often reserved for last line therapy. So a patient would have to go through multiple rounds of chemotherapy or a transplant of some kind, stem cell or bone marrow transplant, all very expensive, very harsh interventions.
Yeah.
But this new set of modalities, cell therapy or gene therapy, have the ability to potentially offer cures to patients. And so what Ori is trying to do is to create a platform by which we can make these products much more efficiently,
Sure.
bring them to patients more quickly, and make them for much lower cost. So maybe a product today that costs somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 to make might be, $25,000 or $50,000 to make. And that would make it potentially very cost effective to treat patients first line therapy.
And do you have any kind of stats or something like that that shows patients that perhaps aren't able to access this sort of therapy at the moment that perhaps could?
So collectively, we've only been able to treat less than 2% of the patients that could potentially benefit from these. And this is really only in the Western world. This is in the US, mostly the UK, some parts of Europe. So the rest of the world, it's 0% for a lot of these places, which means, unfortunately, the other 98% of patients have the worst outcome. These patients are very sick. They have no other options. And most of them, if not all of them, will die of cancer if we don't treat them. So,
And is this specific forms of cancer, types of cancer, or is this across the board?
so the first generation of cell therapy products have been focused in what they call liquid tumors, so blood cancers,
Okay.
known by the names leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma. Most of your audience will be familiar with those names.
Yes.
And we've had very effective clinical effects. We even have 10-year data showing patients that are cured of cancer after 10 years. So they get cured very quickly, but then that response is durable. It lasts for a long time. And then this modality is being studied in all different types of cancer that you can imagine. So solid tumors, think like lung cancer or skin cancer, pancreatic cancer is very very aggressive forms of cancer, ovarian cancer. There's all kinds of these other types of cancers that today some of them don't have any treatments really that are effective. Some of them can treat with traditional modalities, but it's being studied across the board. There's over almost 3,000 clinical trials happening in cell and gene therapy today, really looking at this approach across the board in almost every form of cancer you can think of, and even beyond, even in things like type 1 diabetes or cardiovascular disease or autoimmune diseases, where there's massive patient populations, tens of millions of people are suffering from those diseases. So it has really broad applicability. And certainly the clinical data for the approved products is incredible. It's revolutionary, curing cancer, and it has very great promise in some of these other areas.
It's crazy stats, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's we're 5 years into the first products being approved, so, and we've got massive investment going in. We've got 4 of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world who own these products and are manufacturing them, which just and there's been billions of dollars of investment in trying to create the manufacturing process. But it just shows you the difficulty. It's highly manual processes. It's because biology, when we're making pharmaceuticals out of chemicals, You have the same ingredients, you use the same
Yeah.
recipe, and you get the same result. That's GMP manufacturing for you. When we're putting a variable input, so you're putting up your cells and my cells will behave differently. Your cells will behave differently depending on where you are in your disease progression. It's very hard to know
Yeah, for
how this
sure.
how the cells need to be treated to create that therapeutic outcome that you're trying to achieve. It's just very complicated. Biology is very hard compared to chemistry, and so there's a need for a company like Ori and others that are innovating in this space to bring novel approaches to try and balance this kind of personalization, but at scale. How do you do something mass personalization? It's personalized just to
Yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah.
but you got to do lots of it. And we try to bring down cost of goods through economies of scale. And that thus far, that balance hasn't been struck.
And that kind of leads on to my next question, actually, because you guys, you raised last year your Series B. The head count, I think, is 70 across the UK and US. But presumably, it's not all been plain sailing as business isn't. You touched on it briefly there. What challenges have you had to navigate to get to this point so far?
I mean, you can't see all the gray hair, I don't think, through the through the webcam here. But I mean, this is my third or fourth startup, depending on how you look at it. And startups are always exciting. It's a roller coaster ride. Some things go
Yeah,
well, and things don't go well. And of course, Ori was founded in 2015, actually. I joined in 2019. But over the last 3 or 4 years, we faced Brexit, we faced COVID, we faced massive supply chain disruption. We're facing now 10% inflation, almost the collapse of the banking system with SVB. There's been a massive amount of headwinds for the sector, for early stage companies. And those are all the kind of macro challenges, the kind of outside the
yeah,
company.
yeah, yeah.
Inside the company, there's all kinds of, how do you hire the right people? How do you build the right culture? How do develop your product, your platform? Engineering and biology coming together isn't easy. They're different disciplines, they're different norms. So getting those teams to kind of work together in partnership, none of this stuff is easy. So it's been a really exciting journey. And then, of course, you've had the kind of crash of the biotech markets and the bubble that happened in 2021, making financing incredibly difficult today,
Sure.
where we sit in 2023 and, where we were for most of 2022 is a stark contrast to the couple of years prior to that. So, there are a couple of factors out there that are making these
Mm,
things challenging, but we're in a good spot. As you said, we raised our Series B. It closed in January 2022, so a little over a year ago. That gives us runway, through early 25,
sure.
when we'll be commercial. We'll be post-commercialization then and start to generate revenues, hopefully, like a real business instead of just an R&D shop. And we'll start to see our platform benefiting patients, in the clinic and in the real world. So super
Fantastic.
exciting times for us.
And again, you just kind of touched on my next question. What comes next? You mentioned, so you think you'll be commercial by what, 2025?
Hopefully end of 24, we'll start to deliver the first commercial platform to partners and customers. Yeah.
Sure. And can you share any other developments to the platform itself? Have you got maybe the first version that's ready, and then you'll develop that over time?
Yeah, so we've announced recently, towards the end of last year, a couple Lightspeed early access partners. We call it the LEAP program. So it's how do we get input from, the end users, the end customers. There's really three major segments we're targeting with the platform. So to help academic researchers develop the next generation of
Mm,
therapies.
okay.
And that set of customers has a set of different needs, than kind of industry. So they need more flexibility. They're doing it at a very small scale, highly manual, a little bit more price sensitive. They don't have big budgets to do these academic
Yeah,
research
sure.
projects. So there's some dynamics there that have to be taken into account. The second segment is really the CDMO segment, the contract development and manufacturing companies that are working on behalf of therapy developers to develop these therapies and to bring them into the clinic and beyond. And they have, a unique set of needs themselves. And then you have the therapy developers themselves who are driving the innovation in the space. And that could range from massive, top 10 pharmaceutical companies like a Pfizer or,
Yeah.
Novartis was one of the pioneers in this space. Gilead, BMS has an approved product. Janssen, kind of that end of the global pharma spectrum, which is, massive companies all the way down to, startup biotechs, like one of our partners, Inceptor Bio, which is based in Raleigh, North Carolina, is a startup company. They've got 3 programs in the CAR T, CAR M, CAR NK space. So you run the whole gamut in that therapy developer side, and they also have different needs even within that segment itself. So really developing the platform to be flexible enough to meet the needs of those various customers is a challenge. And then getting that expertise. So we'll be placing the MVP, the beta platform, with those early access partners really over the next 6 to 9 months. We'll have partners using the platform. We'll have data coming off of those partnerships, really to demonstrate not only that the platform works in our hands, but also works in the hands of partners, which isn't always the case with new technologies. They often work very well in the hands of the people who designed them, and maybe not that well in the hands of others. So we want to validate, our internal data and findings with those partners, and then they'll start to look to their in-house processes and start to stretch the experience on the platform and generate data in different cell types, different types of processes, and even doing things like distributed manufacturing potentially.
Exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for you personally, this is just your day job, right?
Yeah, it's my 80-hour a week day job. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you're also a successful investor. You're an NED. You've got a significant portfolio. Can you give our listeners a bit of a high-level overview of your background?
Sure. I would use successful in kind of inverted commas. Sort of, not 100% sure. I have a very early stage portfolio, so time will tell whether I'm a successful investor or not. But yeah, I have a portfolio of 15 companies that I've invested in over the last 5 years or so. I sit on the board of 4 of those companies, including Ori. Some are in the SaaS, clinician credentialing space, a company called Credentially here in the UK. There's a neurorehabilitation platform called Gripable, which helps stroke victims and others to rehabilitate so that they can do, activities of daily living. They can button their shirt or hold a spoon and all these things. So there's a wide range of technologies that I've invested. Anywhere where kind of technology and healthcare intersects is of massive interest to me personally. And with always this kind of theme of, we can spend our energies and our time and our money in lots of different ways. But working in healthcare, obviously we're having an added benefit of seeing the benefits for others, for patients and others, who are benefiting from those technologies as we bring them to market. So that's a super exciting element to what I do, and it helps me as kind of wearing a bunch of hats. So as an operator with Ori, and then as a kind of advisor, director for several other businesses that are mostly earlier stage. They're kind of Series A phase, most of them, or earlier. But also I advise some VC funds as a venture partner or strategic advisor. So those kind of 3 hats, kind of sitting on all sides of the table, of the investment table, are quite, I think, informative and complementary in helping me do each of those jobs a little bit better, be more valuable to those companies that I've invested in, be a better CEO at Ori. So yeah, super exciting time. I think actually we've seen now actually the biotech, the name biotech, flip-flop into tech bio, right? So it's technology-led solutions with application in biology.
Yeah.
And that is evolving as its own domain, separate from biotech, because we're not developing therapeutics, most of us. We're developing technologies that will help us manipulate biology or harness the power of biology in a more kind of repeatable, reliable, lower cost way. So that's certainly what Ori is doing.
Yeah.
But that kind of technology is being used in like cultured meats or environmental applications where we look at maybe bacteria or other things that can consume waste, as an example, or all kinds of other synthetic types of biology applications to keep us from continuing to destroy the planet. So I think
there was something recently about degrading plastics using the same sort of technology.
Exactly.
You have those huge plastic trash in the sea and whatnot. There's a biology that can do that.
Exactly. So really exciting innovation happening in this field.
Sounds like you are a busy guy, and we spoke last time. I think I asked you where you were based. You were like, "Yeah, I'm on an airplane."
I always say my family lives in London, despite my American accent. We've been here for 13 years. I came over here with the last business that I helped build, and So my wife and I are American, but both my kids are British. So we sort of straddle the line somehow.
My last question, your career is in the healthcare technology space. What's your take on the current situation of that space? What are the micro or the macroeconomic factors that are playing their part? What do you think the future holds?
Wow. I mean, I couldn't be more excited. I think just sometimes when you describe your career in retrospect, it all sounds extremely well planned out and sort of thoughtful. I think, there's kind of a red thread between some of it, but when you're in the middle of it and you're sort of just trying to figure out which direction do I go, you try and make the best
Yeah.
decision you can with the information you've got. But, looking back, I think, having concentrated in healthcare for the last 25 years, um, I've watched it really kind of evolve in a massive way. And it remains one of the last bastions to not be sort of, let's call it, modernized by technology. There's these pockets of modernization here and there. And over the last, 3 to 5 years, we've seen incredible amount of innovation driven by the needs, the needs around the COVID pandemic and bringing 5 or 6 vaccines to market in very quick times, 18 months, an unprecedented amount of regulatory innovation, allowing that to happen. This kind of idea of an mRNA vaccine, it was a concept, 15 years ago, funded by, the US government and a couple academic research labs trying to even make this a reality. And then all of a sudden it was the right technology at the right time, in the right place. So I see more and more of that. I think that's stimulated a lot of interest in this intersection, this tech bio intersection. And we're seeing now, lots of money and research going into mRNA being used in different applications to, treat different diseases. And, the innovation is really broad. Just thinking about 60% of the patient healthcare records in the UK are still on paper. So you think about kind of where we're at in our evolution in healthcare.
Some of these stats are just mind-blowing, aren't they?
It is. And maybe that's a little bit out of date a couple of years, but it's definitely not 10%. So it's a large proportion of little trolleys with lots of paper files going around the hospital, and it kind of blows your mind. So the healthcare has been a laggard in technology adoption, and in order to meet the burdens, the skill shortages we have in the UK, we say there's going to be something on the order of 250,000 healthcare staff. It's going to be a shortage in the NHS. The only way to bridge the gap there, we're not going to magic up 250 doctors, 250,000 doctors or nurses. We have to solve the problem with technology. So those kind of needs are becoming more and more acute and more kind of unavoidable to say, well, there's really no other answer besides implementing technology into the system. And so I think we're in a really interesting phase of the development and adoption curve of technology within healthcare. And I think, because technology is slow to, or healthcare is slow to adopt, and, there's some very good reasons why we built inertia into the system so that we don't move too fast. People might get hurt in healthcare, but, electronic batch records or electronic, medical records, that's not going to hurt anybody. We can understand the benefit of that.
No.
So I think we'll see the adoption of technology accelerate over the next, let's say, 20 years to a point where, they've proven now that, AI can actually diagnose patients better than human doctors. And of course they can. It makes perfect sense that they can, because you can have all of the information that's ever been created in humankind and human history. And that, large language model or that AI model can actually access it without any bias, primacy or recency bias, without anything, and just say objectively, if you gave me these inputs, this is what I suggest the top 3 or 4 outputs might be. And then a human being can take that, not waste any time on the diagnosis and say, okay, well, let's develop a care plan for this individual's needs. And human beings are probably always going to be better, at some point, tailoring whatever the suggested intervention is to that patient, because a machine can't really empathize, it can't really understand a patient's individual situation, but there's a lot of things
that early stage of actually cutting through all of that.
Exactly, there's a lot of things
speeds it up so much.
It's a data crunching exercise, right? You sit there and you walk into the doctor's office and they say, well, what's going on? Tell me why you're here. and you download a bunch of information from them. You know, my tooth hurts or my back hurts or this happened or I've got a rash or whatever it is. Essentially, that's a data transfer, right? I'm
Sure.
telling you what's happening. And then they process that in their, you know, mini computer between their ears, and they spit out, well, it could be this, it could be that. I'm going to run this test to see if I can get more data to kind of contribute to that diagnosis. This is ideally suited for machine learning and other kinds of applications. And then we can allow the doctors and nurses that are so good at patient care to do those things instead of spending a lot of time on paperwork, which they do, and spending a lot of time doing things that they're
if you
not.
was to speak to the doctors and nurses, they would agree with that as well.
They would, absolutely.
They
So
would much rather be doing the caring side of things than the data transfer.
exactly. I think everyone sort of, when you think about technology, you think about, oh no, kind of AI is taking over the world and the robots are going to put us out of a job. And, you know, these are kind of, I would call them augmenting technologies. It's let's let the human beings do what they're best at, and let's let the machines and the kind of models do the things that they're best at. And then we'll get an optimal use of both of those resources. And that's exactly what Ori's trying to do, is that, you know, if we manufacture these products, we take the micropipetting from one vial to the next, those kinds of tasks that aren't value added, and we can automate some of those things. But then we let the human operators, the PhD immunologists, interpret those data and make the judgments to say, because ultimately what we want to get is a safe and effective therapeutic out the other side. So let them do what they're good at, let the machines do what they're good at. And I think that kind of thinking will start to pervade healthcare more and more over the next 20 years.
Unbelievable. It certainly seems like exciting times for Ori Biotech and in the wider healthcare technology landscape as well. That's all we've got time for on this episode. Jason, thank you so much for joining me. This has been Tech Talks. Yeah, this has been Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. If you like what you have heard today, give us a like and subscribe to our webpage, and stay tuned for more. Thanks again, Jason.
Thanks, Lee.